Hello friends, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Nick, and this is MSFS Flight Plans, a place that is designed in its entirety just to give you one more reason to get up in the air again and again as we check out some of the coolest, most interesting, best-looking places in the world. Today we will be cruising around the city of Amsterdam, which was another member request and a beautiful and historic place to check out. And if you're not sure where in the world we are, which I'd be surprised to find if anyone didn't, but just head northeast from Paris, cross through Belgium, which is where we enjoyed that Antwerp flight a few months ago. And then you'll arrive in the Netherlands, and we're about halfway up the country's western border along the Eastern Channel. And if you've seen that Antwerp flight, by the way, and if you haven't, it's great, this place actually has a lot of similarities as far as the layout and the landscape goes, and we're only about 60 miles to the northeast of Antwerp, so if you want to make it a twofer, and Rotterdam is in between these two places actually, I guess you could make it a threefer if you had the time to do it. As you can see, we are once again in the Caravan, which we took in that Virginia flight, but this time it's not the glass cockpit because I uninstalled that TDS GTNXi that I keep going on and on about. That was for some reason messing up all of my navigation systems. So I put all of my steam gauge planes back in the sim, and so far the Bonanza is the only one that's not working right, and I don't know if it has anything to do with that or not, the TDS system, but I can't get any of our flight plans to load up in the plane. Everything else works totally fine, but I couldn't use autopilot because it's not loading the flight plans up, so I don't know what's up with that. But it's not working. So we're in the Caravan today, which is fine with me because I love this plane. I do have the live weather on, and I don't know if you could hear it or not when we first started before we got the engines going, but it is a bit windy out here, as it appears to be most of the year, which is probably why they have windmills all over the place. But the skies are clear, and we have mostly a headwind. I think we'll get a headwind for both takeoff and landing, maybe just a touch of a crosswind on takeoff, but we should be good to go with that. All right, let's turn our fuel pump off. At least set it to, there we go. Turn our starter off. Get one notch of flaps in. And if you load this flight plan up, and again, if this is your first time here, I always have this entire flight plan just as we took it included in the video description, so you can pull it over into a little NavMap and into the sim if you want to. But this one will start you at a parking spot. It was just kind of a maze to get out to this runway, and so I drove out here, parked right by the runway. So that's where we are. Okay, let's check the barrow. Glad we did that. Turn off the parking brake. And here we go. So this airport we're leaving from is a former Navy facility called Valkenberg. And it's about 20 miles from downtown Amsterdam, and the code for it is Echo Hotel Victor Bravo. And they don't use it for military stuff anymore. They said that a local glider club is using it, which must be nice to have a whole airport to yourself. And we will get a little bit of stuttering on this flight. There is just so much going on. And I think this is also one of the World Update cities. And I've got a ton of freeware add-ons included as well, so let me just mention that real quick. Put all of them in there if you want to. All the links are also in the video description. There are so many add-ons available for the Netherlands, so I just pulled out the ones for the areas we'll be flying over. And there's one payware add-on that improves the roads down here, because a lot of them looked pretty bad before. It was like $8, but I mentioned that that one is the payware one in the description as well, so you can just check that out and not include that one if you don't care about the roads. All right, but I think it included the Netherlands and Belgium and maybe even France too, so it included quite a few places. All right, let's do this. And where's that windsock? Alright, so, okay, I can feel we got a little bit of a crosswind going here. That baby is dancing around, isn't it? Let's see how bad it is. Well, let's keep that wing down. Alright, and we're up. No problem. There's an interesting story behind this airport, which I'll tell you in just a second once we get set up and I'll get the autopilot on. Alright, let's pull our RPMs back a little bit. Get our torque down. And go ahead and get the autopilot on. And we'll get our vertical speed. We're going to be flying at 2,500 feet today, which is just about perfect. Alright, I think everything's good. Go ahead and turn our landing lights off. No warning lights on? Okay. Alright, so this airport, they started building this in 1939, this one we just left from. And there's no add-on available for it, by the way. But if you want to fly into Schiphol, which is where we'll be landing, there is a beautiful payware add-on, which I did not buy, from Fly Tampa. One of the best looking ones I've seen, actually. So you can get that if you're going to be flying in or out of there a lot, assuming you don't already have it. But this airport we just left from was built in 1939, and they weren't able to complete it before World War II started, but once the Germans rolled in, much to everybody's chagrin out here, I'm sure, they were all too willing to finish the job, and they used it until 1943, until they converted it to a decoy airport. And I couldn't figure out why they did that, but I bet there's an interesting story behind it. If anyone knows, let me know. And a guy named Franz von Werra took off here, von Werra, W-E-R-R-A, took off from here on October 25th of 1941 on his way to going down in history as the one who got away. The German pilot's Bf-109E was shot down over Kent, England in September of the year prior, and he was captured by an army cook and sent to Canada as a POW. Well, he managed to escape from a prisoner transport train as they were heading through Ontario by jumping out of a window with 7 other guys. I don't think they all squeezed through at the same time, but maybe they did. And finally made his way down to New York, and then down to Mexico, and then Brazil, Spain, Italy, and finally back to Germany on April 18th of 1941, where he promptly got back into a fighter, took off from this very airport that we left from, and lost an engine out over the North Sea, crashed, and they never found his body. Talk about an unfortunate twist of fate. All right, as we turn left here and make our way towards Amsterdam, we're going to see the town of Leiden, which looks awesome. That's it right down there to our left. Also known as the City of Discoveries, its hometown university is one of the best in Europe, and it's the oldest in the Netherlands, being founded in 1575. And they've also got some museums of just about every type you can imagine down there. And we're going to be able to see that this is a formerly fortified city, because they've got a big moat going all the way around it, which is awesome, though I couldn't find any walls. They had walls at one time, but I don't think any of those are still standing. And here's the rim of the moat. See the little points coming out here like that? And it goes all the way around it like that. But before the moat, the first defensive structure was a motte-style stronghold up on a hill near the current city center. That was built in 1060 AD and was destroyed a couple times until they built a circular shell fort out of brick in 1204. And if you're passing through, you can still visit it today. Let's see if we can spot that, actually. I don't think so. It's right down here in the middle of the city. Oh, that might be it right there. I bet that's it right there. That's where it would be. We're not going to be close enough to see if you can see the circular thing. They probably put a roof on it in the sim. You know how that goes. And as you can see, the landscape out here looks amazing. By the 1400s, the fortified perimeter of the town was in place, and just in time for a 2-month siege in 1420, which finally drew to a close after a relatively new invention called the cannon blew its walls to bits. And supposing I assume that cannons would be just a short-term fad, they rebuilt the walls and endured another siege in 1572, and this time they actually managed to hold out for a full 5 months. And the town endured another unfortunate brush with gunpowder in 1807 when a ship loaded with nearly 40,000 pounds of it blew up in a canal right by the middle of town. And that blast killed 151 people, injured over 2,000, and leveled more than 200 structures downtown. And apparently the horror was so profound that nobody even attempted to rebuild anything for nearly 80 years. And in 1886, they left a large portion of the blast zone open, becoming Vander Werf Park, right along one of the waterways. Of course, we'll look at all that on the satellite map when we're done. Look at those fields down there. There was another add-on you could get for this area, and they said they put almost 2 million farm animals out in these fields. But this is tulip country out here, and I didn't want a bunch of goats and cows and sheep stomping all over our flowers, so I just left that one out. That was another $6 if you like looking at farm animals. See, those roads look substantially better than they did before with that add-on pack. They look pretty rough before I put that in there. And getting back to Leiden real quick before we get too far away, and perhaps most significantly, Rembrandt. Yes, that Rembrandt is from Leiden. Alright, before we do anything else, let's see if we can sort out some nomenclature issues about this area. Before this trip, I wasn't quite sure what the deal was with Holland, the Netherlands, and Dutch people. And I was kind of just hoping no one would ask me to point out anything out here on a map, because I'd probably just play it safe and point to, I don't know, Switzerland. Well, it turns out the Netherlands and Holland are kind of the same thing, and could probably safely be used interchangeably. But if we want to get more precise, look at those windmills. Holy smokes. Yeah, it's blowing out here. But to be more precise, the Netherlands is broken into 12 provinces, with the 2 most populous of them called North and South Holland. And as a matter of fact, we're about to cross from South to North Holland. So a big chunk of the Netherlands is either North or South Holland. So what qualifies someone as Dutch, you may be wondering? Well, anyone who is from the Netherlands is considered Dutch. But not everyone from the Netherlands is from Holland, because there's a small chance they could live in one of the other 10 provinces. So bottom line, just say you're going to the Netherlands and call everyone Dutch when you get here, and you should be alright. Alright, just off the nose to our left there is Schiphol Airport, by far the largest in the area and where we will eventually be landing, so I'll tell you more about that later. And downtown Amsterdam is right on the other side of it. That's all this stuff out here. But instead of just plowing right into the city, I want to take you around the outskirts first, because this place has no less than 40 perimeter forts built all around it. And there could be even more that I just couldn't spot. And when you see our flight plan at the end, it's going to look like a big spiral as we come around this kind of outer area here, and then we'll circle back around and just kind of keep twisting our way in. We're going to look at a big port down on the coastline, and then we'll cruise over downtown Amsterdam. So the story behind these forts is absolutely fascinating, and I'll tell you all about that way we enjoy spotting some of them from the air. There should be one coming up here pretty soon. They look just, well, not just like, but very similar to those that we saw in that Antwerp flight. Alright, once we flatten out, there's one of them right there. And they all look kind of like that. They got a moat going around them, and then this little kind of arrow-shaped thing sticking out. So these things started going up in 1880 at regular intervals, anywhere from 6 to 9 miles from the city center. Look at that thing. Some of them don't have as many trees on them, so we'll be able to see the structures in there a little bit better. So as I was flying over these things on my test flight, and before I knew the story behind them, I was thinking, geez, to build that many of them is kind of a waste of resources, because all you have to do is take out one or two of them and you've got a clear path to the city. There's another one right there. And that one doesn't have as many trees on it, so you can see the concrete stuff down there. Well, it turns out there was a plan to prevent that from ever happening, anyone being able to break through by taking out one or two of these things. All these forts were built along an elevated rim called the Defense Line of Amsterdam, with the slightly higher ground of the city behind them, and then these on this side of it was all slightly lower elevation land. And if attack ever came, there's another fort there. Look at that. Look how many they got out here. If anyone ever attacked the place, the plan was to open up some of the dikes and flood all this area out here on the outside of it. And the plan wasn't to make it so that people would drown. They would only flood it to about a foot, maybe 2 feet. They didn't want it so deep that ships could pull up here and start blasting away at the places with cannons. But they wanted to make it just tricky enough to get through that people would get stuck and the artillery would get stuck. And then these forts could pick them all off. So how's that for a brilliant strategy? But unfortunately, they were a victim of bad timing, because the last ones were finished by 1920, and by then they had airplanes. And that kind of rendered them all useless. Alright, I'm going to slow down just a little bit here, because we are cruising right along. We got a tailwind now, so our ground speed's probably, well, I can tell you exactly what it is. 180 knots. How's our cabin temperature? You guys comfortable? 45 degrees. Holy smokes. Let's get that going there. Hopefully that'll warm it up a little bit. The good news, though, about those forts is that pretty much every one of them is still standing, and a lot of them have been repurposed as museums of all types, markets, and other local attractions. Alright, if we look up into this town up here, it's a suburb of Amsterdam Southeast. See that big thing sticking up right there? That's called the Johan Cruijff Arena. Yep, I looked up how to say that. And it's got a huge retractable roof on it, and that's home to the local all-stars of the AFC Ajax Soccer Club. And that whole area is fairly new in the grand scheme of things. They started building it out in the 1960s, billing it as a town of the future. The whole thing was mapped out in advance with a honeycomb network of futuristic-looking high-rise apartments, very futuristic for the 1960s, and different pavement elevations with separate tracks for cars and buses and bikes and people. Well, it turns out, unfortunately for them, that the people of the 1970s didn't think all the dystopian-looking blocks of gray buildings were all that pleasing to the senses, and they started bailing out. So it didn't take long for the people who like paying really low rent to move in, and soon the whole area degraded into a neighborhood just as unattractive as its buildings. And despite some attempts to gentrify it in the early 2000s, from what I could gather, it's still far from the ideal place to live in these parts. And I also read that there's another fort, and there's another one out there too. In 1992, an Israeli 747 cargo plane lost 2 engines after taking off from Schiphol, heading out to the Tel Aviv airport that we left from on that flight. And they lost 2 of their engines, literally, like they broke off the plane. And it wound up crashing into one of those apartment buildings back down there, killing the crew and almost 40 people on the ground. Alright, we got another really cool looking town up here on our left. And over here is, let's see, where are we oriented right now? So over here, this area is called the suburb of Bussum, B-U-S-S-U-M, which doesn't seem to have much going on. But just to the north of it, let's see, let me get my bearing straight here. I don't want to point at the wrong thing. So that must be Bussum, if that's how you say it out there. And then over here will be a place called Naarden. And it's definitely got a lot going on in that place. Wait till you see this. You can kind of see it right there. I don't want to spoil it, but you can tell what I might be talking about here in just a second. That place got its start around 1300, as they decided the coolest thing to do would be to turn their whole town into a fort. And I would never fault anyone for that line of thinking. And despite its prickly perimeter, as you're going to see here, they got points coming all out around it here. That hamlet endured a rather nasty episode in 1572 during the 80 Years' War, also known as the Dutch Revolt against Spain. As Spain attempted to wear down the Dutch rebellion, they adopted a practice of paying their soldiers only with what could be looted from these towns. So, of no surprise, this became a catalyst for some rather unsavory behavior by the Spanish, not the least of which was torture, rape, murder, and razing every town they came across to the ground. And by the time the Spanish made it out here to Naarden, their reputation preceded them, so the citizens decided to negotiate a surrender instead of trying to hold out. So the Spanish gathered up a few hundred in the city's central church, locked the doors, and burned it to the ground. And as they moved on to the rest of the population, they killed all but 60 of the roughly 3,000 residents in what would go down in history as the Massacre of Naarden. Brutal, huh? Alright, up next is the city of Almere, which happens to be the hometown of our channel member who suggested this flight. So of course we have to do a flyby. Big shout out to JDV. Thank you very much for being a part of our community. A relatively recent member too, I understand. Look at that road. That looks so much better than they did before. So this is Almere out here. This is all Almere. And they've got two noteworthy places we're going to try to spot as we head into town. The first is the Almere Jungle, which is kind of like a zoo and an animal shelter combined for anything too exotic to drop off at the Humane Society. And when I first flew over it, I thought it might be a big chateau estate because it definitely has that kind of look with some little waterways and gardens and things like that. But that's not what it is. I asked our local member what it is and he told me all about it. So we'll see that in just a sec here once we start circling back around. And make sure you stick around to the end of this one. I can tell by the usual drop-off rate that sometimes people don't stick around to the end to check out the satellite map, which I certainly understand because after waiting to see if I crash on landing, which I don't blame anyone for waiting around for, we'll look at all this stuff from the air. And I have a ton of other places bookmarked out here that just weren't, would have made the flight too long to go check them out. But look at all those windmills. Good grief. Man, you don't need any other kind of power plants out here with the amount of wind they get and that many windmills. But there's a lot of other places I'll show you on the satellite map that are probably worth checking out if you feel like spending a little more time out here. Those fields look beautiful. And after we look at the jungle here, the second place I'm going to show you is called Almere Castle, which has a rather interesting story behind it. We're not quite at the jungle yet. There it is right there, actually. See, you could tell, if you just fly over that and didn't take a close look and didn't see what it was, you might think it was an old rundown estate for a big manor house or chateau. But it's not. That's where they have the little... And you can go and pet most of the things that won't rip your hand off. Look pretty cool. Alright, so right out over here, this is the Almere Castle. And even when I got close to it on the satellite map, I thought it was an old rundown castle with just scaffolding all over it. But it's a pretty new place. They started building it in 2000 as some kind of joint that you could rent out for weddings and other events, because I guess they didn't have their own old castle out here. But once they got started, the builders discovered it would cost about twice as much to finish it, so they didn't. Since then, they've tried to repurpose it as a hotel and some residential plots, but the city declined some zoning requests, so in 2013 they tried to put together plans to build an amusement park around it. But that fell through too. So now it just sits there looking like a crumbling ruin, which doesn't look all that out of place out here. So if you see it from the ground, they got one big tower done. I think an artist consortium pulled some funds together to finish a part of it, but all the rest of it just has scaffolding over it. And that's about what it looks like. We'll try to spot some more castles as we go along. No shortage of them out here. As far as Almere itself, it also is a planned city. They've got quite a few of those out here, and it's the newest in the Netherlands, actually. And the land it sits on is reclaimed from the big lake to the north. They did that in the 1960s. And the initial idea was not futurism, but basic functionality and a leveling of social class. Well, it turns out that people don't like drab synonymity anymore than they like futuristic cities out here. So in the 1990s, they started trying to build a more diverse collection of visually appealing properties with modern architecture. And to nobody's surprise, people really like living in an area that has places like that. And from the air, it actually reminds me a lot of the parts of the south side of Jacksonville where I live, where they'll just build, usually they start with a big commercial retail center, and then they just build tons of, nowadays, apartment complexes just kind of radiating out from around it. And one thing I noticed about this area, oh, we got some solar panels popping. Boy, this is a really green part of the world, isn't it? You know, I'm trying to think. I don't think I saw any coal-fired plants or anything like that out here. Or any cooling towers, so they must not have nuclear out here either, although I guess you could use those at a coal-fired plant too. But in Jacksonville, and apparently out here, they're building by far more multifamily units than single houses, so maybe that's the way the whole world's moving. I mean, I'd say probably 80% of the stuff out here looks like that. We'll look at the satellite map at the end, I'll show you. It's very hard to find any single-family neighborhoods out here. But other than downtown Amsterdam and the places that have fortifications around them, most of the population areas we're going to see have been of the planned city type. Alright, this big body of water here is called the Almere, which is actually man-made, kind of. About 2,000 years ago, this whole area was a collection of shallow inland lakes that were really prone to flooding by the extreme tides from the North Sea and water blown in by the storms they have up here. But by the 16th century, a bunch of dikes were built out here to try to control the flooding, but those kept breaking. And on that note, if you ever told the folk story of the kid that put his finger in the dike in primary school, well, that was settled here in Holland. So since the dikes kept breaking, they started making plans to drain the whole area and make it farmland, but that didn't pan out either, so they went the other direction, and in 1932 decided to permanently flood the area, controlling the current water level with a series of 2 giant modern dikes that completely close it off from the ocean. And if you want to fly out that way, you can see both of them, and those are in-sim mods, and they both look fantastic. I'll show you where they are on the satellite map at the end. But the first one you can just barely kind of see. It's right on the other side of this little island here, and then the other one's out there by the ocean. Alright, right along this coastline up here, it's going to be on our left, is the historic town of Zaandam. And if you have a kink for women wearing traditional Dutch attire, like those little bonnets with the pointy sides that stick up in the air and clogs, well, you might want to stop by this place, because they're kind of into that down there, apparently. And from the pics that I could find of this place on the ground, it looks really just like something you'd find on a postcard from Holland. You remember those things, right? If I said postcard to any of my girls, I bet they wouldn't have a clue what I was talking about. And I set our takeoff time, if you're flying this around the end of October in 2023, at about 2:15, because it was looked kind of nice as I was coming into the airport last time. Sun kind of low on the horizon. And if you see the thumbnail for this flight and feel disappointed once you get in here, I took that from my test flight yesterday, and there was a beautiful storm right over this area with a big rainbow coming down from the clouds, so I took a picture of that for the thumbnail. But some areas were too dark from the rain to see, so I had to wait till the weather got better. We would have not been able to use live weather. And right on here on the north side of town, we're going to have another fort, and that one's called Fort Zaandam, E-D-A-M. And just to provide a little more color to what I was saying earlier about them being repurposed, this one seems to be a fully built out model of what it probably looked like. And each of the rooms have like a different, I guess, diorama, of what life in there probably would look like. One of them's got like a bunch of old radio gear. Another one had like an old soldier's bar. Another one had a bunch of old firefighting equipment. Very cool. We'll see if we can spot that as we come over. So I think this is the oldest part of town here. And then again out here they started building more of the multifamily houses, and of course this is a little more industrial down here. And a lot of these towns, if they're old enough, in the middle of them have big giant cathedrals. And during the switch to Protestantism, a lot of the Catholics were driven out, and they had to make like literally underground churches. And I guess people around here just kind of looked the other way as long as they paid some kind of tax for being Catholic. But they still have a lot of the big cathedrals out here. So there's that little fort. So if you're down here checking that one out and you want to see what life looked like inside of those, we have a bunch of very sharply dressed mannequins doing various different soldierly things, go check out that one. And you'll notice some of these fields are yellow or red, and I think that's probably because, like these up here, got some tulips growing in there. Alright, we're going to take a little left turn here and head out over this way. And I think that's another one of the planned neighborhoods, and I couldn't find anything very interesting about it. But they do have 2 more forts on the outskirts of that one. And one of them is used by a wine wholesaler, almost kind of like a wine cellar, just racks and racks of wine bottles in there. And they turned the second one to the west, and we'll see if we can spot both of them, into a fancy resort. How's that for resourcefulness? So on the second one that we'll see, which is going to become kind of somewhere over here on this side, they got like swimming pools out there, and when I was looking at the rooms, I mean, you can tell they're inside of a bunker because they have that big arch ceiling. But they were very well appointed, which is, I guess if you have a kink for staying in old forts, you could do that too out here. Because you'd think most people would want to stay in the ritzy places down by downtown Amsterdam. All right, I'm going to pick up the pace just a little bit here. Oh, not that much. All right, look how great this scenery looks. Wait till you see downtown. Unfortunately, downtown's just so busy with so much going on, and there's in-sim add-ons and the freeware add-ons. We will just get a little bit of stuttering down there, but it looks cool. And this big harbor we're going to fly over, there's one big harbor right up here that we'll check out, but the main harbors and ports are all down here by downtown, and they are just all over the place and look really cool. All right, so let's see if we can see the resort fort. I think we're flying right over the first one right now. And the other one's going to be around this side. I don't see that one just yet. But apparently flower business is big business out here. They have a bunch of big like annual festivals out here. We'll see some of the, at least one of the parks where they do that stuff here in just a little bit. All right, I'm trying to find that other fort. It's going to be the one with the pools. We may be too far away to see the pools, which is a bummer, but I'll show it to you on the satellite map. And that's going to be down here in this area somewhere. You guys see it? Yep, might be just a little bit too far away. How's our wind doing? Well, 28 knot headwind right now. Oh, there it is. That's it right there. And can we see the pool in it? This right here is their pool. See that little tiny blue thing right there? But that's pretty wild. I mean, who buys an old fort and like, yeah, I'm gonna make a mint off this. I'm gonna turn it into a resort. And they got like lawn chairs and everything out here, looking out over the beautiful landscape of that moat. Very cool. And pretty much any of these forts, if you go in, I don't think there's any that are just completely shut down, like just run down and everything. If they didn't do anything else with them, they just kind of left them as museums, where you can check all that stuff out. Look at these red fields here. Smell the tulips. Beautiful. Alright, if you're wondering what you should pack for your next flight to the Netherlands, this time of year the average daily temp is around 44 degrees Fahrenheit, so bring a jacket. And the wind is obviously a bit brutal out here, so bring a scarf too. And in the heart of winter it dances around the freezing mark. Didn't appear to get really, really cold out here, probably because they're so close to the ocean. And the much milder summer months, it doesn't usually get above the 70s, which just sounds delightful. I have like that seasonal depression sickness here in Florida. In August every year I really struggle with bouts of depression because it's so hot and so humid that you just don't even want to leave the house. It's so bad. And as we take this next turn, we're going to see another fort. I mean, you can see forts everywhere. In fact, there's another one right there. And what's kind of funny is they don't all look identical as far as the built-up structures that are on there. I mean, they're kind of the same as far as the footprint, but it appears no two of them are precisely the same. But if they built them over the course of 40 years, maybe they just changed the design style a little bit as they were going along. But once we take this turn, we'll see one, this one right here, as a matter of fact. That one has a virtual VR escape room inside of it. How cool would that be? And I have to guess that maybe the reason people put it in there instead of just buying a big warehouse somewhere and doing that, because you obviously don't need it to look great if your head's stuck in a VR unit the whole time. Maybe they just offer it to people really, really cheap, so they don't just let it decay. Alright, we're going to take a pretty hard left here in just a second, and we're going to go cruise down and check out this port. But along the way, we're going to spot some castles, and we don't want to miss that. This is just a really beautiful flight. Really, really nice. See if anyone's down there throwing up after doing the VR thing. Alright, we'll be up over the entrance to the main canal that goes down to Amsterdam here in a minute, but And the name of that canal, by the way, is honestly one of the longest words I've ever seen. It has 23 letters in it. And I think that translates to the North Sea Canal. And the whole thing was in Dutch, and I didn't even want to try to pronounce that one, so we'll just leave that one alone. But before we get there, we'll fly over the town of Heemskerk, where we'll almost see a couple of castles. And there's going to be a big field is the first thing that we're going to see. And it's got the imprint of Oud Haarlem Castle, which was built in 1248 and then demolished after a siege in 1351. But you can still see the outline of it, which is really cool. And it's going to look pretty big as far as castles go. And when you see it, here's another fort. And that's probably another one there. I mean, that is just insane how many of those things they built. But imagine, I mean, just open some dikes, a couple hours, this whole area is flooded. They never had to do it, fortunately. But that would be an incredible sight, I'm sure. Alright, I think this area right up here is where the imprint of the old castle is going to be. But there's going to be another little dark spot just to the right of it, which is the moat area for a place called Assenberg Castle. And unfortunately the castle rendered flat, but you will get a sense of how much bigger this other place would have been compared to that one. But this other little one down here does have some beautiful looking gardens. So you'll see this real good here in a minute. But this whole area here, the reason why that looks so big is because they had not one but two baileys. So they had the moat in the middle there, and then they had like a curtain wall going through the middle of it. So this outer one would have been the outer moat, then the curtain wall, and then the castle would have been in the center here, and then they had two series of moats going around it. And here's where the other castle is, and you can see it's not there. But if you look right over the top of it, you can see the outline of the castle, and that sits right in the middle of that moat there. And I think that one was built in the 1400s, but look at all those gardens around there. Real nice. Let's look at it at the side window. Yeah, you can just barely see the outlines and the little drawbridge thing going out there. But look at the relief of that. I mean, that is modeled just beautifully. So the castle would have been right about here, and each of the four walls are about 150 feet long, and that's about twice the size of the place that's sitting in the middle of that when the original castle was down there. Very cool. Okay, we're going to have a look at this very industrial and very filthy port area. And you know my fondness of the words filthy and industrial when used to describe anything. So this should look pretty cool too. And I don't think the port add-ons, props again to Freaky D, we used one of his add-ons for this, I don't think they went all the way up here. I think he did this stuff down by, look at those trains down there, down by Amsterdam. So there won't be any ships or anything in here, or any cranes sticking up in the air, but it is going to look big and industrial and filthy. All my favorite things when it comes to scenery. And I think all this here, well, I know all it is because I saw all the place names, are different types of steelworks. And then right on the other side of it here, this is all multifamily housing units out here. Again. But look at that there. Don't take your fill of forts yet. We're going to see far, far more forts. Well, we all see a fort. There's a fort right there. Ports yet, because we're going to see far more than that once we get down by Amsterdam. Look at these little walls here and stuff. Sensational. Oh, look, a swimming pool. Guys get a little hot working in the steel mill, hop in the swimming pool. Alright, this thing here is called Fort Island IJmuiden. And this place is pretty substantial compared to the others. It's the biggest of all of the defense line forts. And that was built in the 1880s. And in World War II, it was used by the Germans as part of their Atlantic Wall fortifications that extended all the way from the tip of Norway down to the northern border of Spain where it connects to France. So that was a very long line of defenses. And if you look really close out back behind us, if you go along the shoreline, well, really all the way along the shoreline, you can see the little bunkers that remain from the Atlantic Wall. And as a funny little side note to that, you know, I always type in bunker when I'm looking over Google Maps just to see what all comes up. Look at this place. And right down here, we'll look at it on the satellite map from a little closer. These are all steel encased, like domed cannon enclosures here. And that place kind of looks like a haunted house now from the inside. They got a bunch of old chandeliers with cobwebs and stuff hanging over them. I think you can rent it out for parties and stuff. But when I was looking for bunkers out here, I saw one that appeared to be in the middle of a golf course. So when I zoomed into it, I saw that Google had planted a little bunker flag right in the middle of a sand trap, which is just brilliant. Just brilliant. And this area out here has a lot of dunes in it. I think they call it the dune region. And most of them are covered by trees nowadays. But you could go check out some more dunes if you didn't get enough of that during our dune extravaganza. All right, in just a moment, we'll be coming up on the location of another fortified town, and this one is called Haarlem. And yes, it is the namesake of the other Haarlem here in the U.S. And all you history buffs will probably recall that New York City was originally colonized by the Dutch in 1624, made it a big trading port. And its first name, New York City's was New Amsterdam. But this Haarlem sprang to life around 900 AD, back before humans were able to wrangle the water levels out here. And because it's set on a little strip of elevation called the Strand Wall, and they took advantage of that feature, they charged tolls to pass across it for traders and travelers, so it made the city pretty wealthy in the early days. And after the siege of a nearby town in 1270, the residents decided to build a earthworks wall around the city, which was great for containing fires, with one notable blaze in 1328 burning the entire place to the ground. And here it is here. You can see the little points of it. Burned the whole place to the ground in 1328. And they put that back together, and then another inferno wiped it out again in 1347. And they could barely clean up the rubble from that one when another one swept through just 4 years later. So figuring the torching intervals might have something to do with their wimpy outer wall, 50 years later they decided to fix that problem by digging that huge moat around it, and then adding a 50-foot high wall inside of that, just to be sure. And I, for one, am glad they did it, because apparently it's too much of a hassle to fill it back in, and now we can enjoy it today. Let's look out the side here. Look at that place. They got a big train station there, too. And there's a big church down there called St. Bavokirk, and inside there is a Mueller pipe organ built in 1738, which claims to be the most photographed instrument in the world. And if you check out a picture of it, you'll understand why, but that thing has more than 5,000 pipes, and the tallest of them is nearly 32 feet long. And they said that a 10-year-old Mozart went down there and played around on it for a while, so that's pretty cool. And do we have another fort down there? Could be. Kind of looks like it. Alright, this thing here is pretty interesting. See that little pyramid sticking up there? That's called Big Spotter's Hill. And that thing's a little over 70 feet high, and it kind of looks like a step pyramid because they have it terraced. And they built that in 2002 as a viewing location for a big horticulture exhibition they have out here. And a big modern art sculpture was perched on the top when it was complete, but that blew away during a storm in 2004. So the one that's up there now is not quite as delicate. They put the new one up there in 2014. And that's not really what it looks like, whatever they have on top of there now. It looks a lot more like one of those old school jungle gyms that blessed you with your first full arm cast when you fell off it in 3rd grade. Look at this here. And this is all a huge park where that pyramid is, back down in here. And they got, it doesn't really look like it here, but some really ornate shrubbery carvings and stuff like that down there. We'll check it out on the satellite map at the end. And there should be a little fort up here, this one right here. That's called Fort Hoofddorp. And that's just a regular old fort, but on the outside of it they should have one of those old school Dutch windmills right here, and I forgot to look last time. It's going to be right here, so we'll see if it actually looks like an old school Dutch windmill once we come around it here. I don't think my vision's good enough to see the fine details. I see something sticking up down there. Are there any windmill blades on it? Oh, please tell me we can see windmill blades. We'll look out the side here. And all these little colored houses, they really paint their houses that color down here, so that's accurate. Oh, come on. Oh, geez, come on. Oh, yeah, you can see the blades on it. Sure enough. Wow, okay, well, that's cool. A little Easter egg for us. Really neat. And there's another InSim add-on for someplace that's a little bit further from here that's just a big field of those things. Alright, so let's start slowing way down as we come around Schiphol here, which is to our left. And now we are going to cut over downtown Amsterdam. And there's going to be a lot to see out here, so I'll just kind of tell you about it, and then we'll spot it as we go over. And then we'll circle around and come in and land from the north. Got some cars popping in the parking lot down there. Doesn't bother me one bit. The scenery out here is just so amazing, I'll take a little bit of popping like that. All right, the first thing we're going to see is the Olympic Stadium, and that one's not going to be hard to spot at all. Some of the other stuff will be because it's really jammed in downtown. And they built that thing when Amsterdam hosted the 1928 Olympic Games. And since then, they built it up to twice the original capacity to host their Ajax football club, which is the one that moved out to that other stadium that we saw when that thing was built in 2018. But after those guys moved out, they tore it back down to its original specs, and now it's listed as a national monument. So it's been there quite a while, built in 1928. That's not it, by the way. You won't miss it when we come around in here. Yeah, when you look at any of these areas from the ground, all the houses are painted these really bright colors, so I'm so glad they added that little touch. I mean, these are probably autogen houses, but the fact that they put the different colors on them and don't do that in every other part of the world is a nice little bit of attention to detail. Really appreciate that. Yeah, I was so close to pulling the trigger and just getting this airport from Fly Tampa because I just wanted to walk around inside the terminal. It looked so realistic. It was unbelievable. Really cool. Yes, I know this is not proper procedure for flying anywhere near an airport, but we've got some stuff to see downtown here, and I don't want to take an extra 30 minutes to do it properly. Why is our light still on? Is it still cold in here? Well, good thing we wore our jacket and scarf. We can keep some tulips in the back, keep them fresh. I'm not going to keep fiddling with that. Alright, so let's see, where's that stadium? I don't think we can see it yet because we're not going to miss it once it comes into view. We're going to turn right here a little bit. I think it's probably right in front of us. But they've got a lot of history out here. They had some Romans rolling through. Of course, they had their little issues with Spain for a while. And officially, I believe this is called the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Yep, this is. I'm going to try not to turn my head too fast because this is where we're going to start getting the stuttering because there's so much going on down here. And much like Atlanta here in the U.S., they have multiple downtown areas, and this must be like the real business commercial district because they don't have as many modern-looking high-rises as you're going to see once we get over the main downtown area. All right, Stadium, where are you? We'll see when we turn right here. So after we get past that, let me just tell you about it because we're going to see some rapid-fire stuff here. They've got the Van Gogh Museum and the Rijksmuseum. I think that's what it's called. There's the stadium right there. I knew we'd see it eventually. We're getting a little bit of popping. And here is where, this is the Van Gogh Museum, and here's the other one up here. And Van Gogh, of course, was Dutch, so he's kind of a big deal out here. And his museum opened in 1972, and I think that's this little one right here. And that hosts over 2 million visitors a year who can enjoy the world's largest collection of his works. And the Rijksmuseum here is just a short walk away, and that looks just beautiful. And there you can find some of the world's largest collections of art from all the other rock stars of the canvas, including plenty of Rembrandts, of course, also being a Dutch native. And Vermeer is also from out here. All right, so the palace is this building right here. And they've got two big churches. This one right next to it is called the New Church, and this is called the Old Church, which is right next to the Red Light District, which is right over here. So I guess after you're done doing whatever you do in the Red Light District, you can go over there and ask for forgiveness. And this is their big opera house right here and a ballet place. And then here's their big central station right here. There's the palace right there. And that's one of 3 palaces that the monarchy has access to out here. And right over here is the Anne Frank house. I'm sure I don't have to tell you about who she is, but it's just too packed in there, we wouldn't be able to spot it. And this building looks really cool. On this side of it here, I didn't think to look when we were coming into it. They got a big, nice-looking, old-school edifice on there. It looks just amazing. But look at all these ports out here. And they have a VR flight place right here. I saw the place tag for that. That looks a little funny, doesn't it? But it looks like it's under construction, so we'll forgive them for that. But they got it like a... I think they do like VR tours, aerial tours of Holland if you go in there and do that. And there's another very interesting looking H-shaped building that we're going to see here right along the coastline once we level out here. And I could not figure out what's actually inside of this place because there was all kinds of business names in it. And this is it right here. Let me look out the window. Look at that. I think it's a hotel mainly. We'll look out the side here. Look at that. It's opened up right in the middle of it and right along the water there. And now we get to the good ports. We got all these ships down here all over the place. Some of them in dry dock. That looks like a very dry dock. Oof. Open the dike. Let some of that ocean water in here. And we got something sticking up over there too. All kinds of petroleum places. And as we turn around and get ready for our approach, we're going to come around this way and come right on this runway right here. We'll see some nice cranes sticking up in there. You can see them all down over here. Looks really good. Just a beautiful area. We're going to get some of those geometric trees over here, and I don't know why, with everything else looking so amazing, that would be overlooked, but it is what it is. A little dry in there too, isn't it? Just amazing. Beautiful. Okay, let me start slowing down a little bit. Get ready for flap speed, and we're going to have, it looks like a, 35 knot headwind coming in here. But it looks like actually going to be a little bit of a crosswind, so hopefully that won't be a problem, but we're at least facing the right direction. And look at all these. This is what all the houses look like out here. Just multifamily stuff everywhere. All over the place. And I don't know what that's going to look like. Like I said, in Jacksonville, that's what everything they've been building for the last, really since the last housing bust. Very few single-family neighborhoods have gone up anywhere around here. And I can't imagine what's going to happen when the next economic bomb explodes, because when that happened last time in 2005 and 6, they were doing the same kind of stuff, and all of it became low-income housing, because the banks probably foreclosed on the properties and were just willing to take whatever they could get for that stuff. But I'm hoping that doesn't happen again. And all of Jacksonville, as I mentioned before, is already having, like most big cities, a really serious poverty problem. And if my kids weren't still in school here, we'd probably move a little bit further south by St. Augustine, which is where anyone who can afford to do it is starting to move to, as the poverty, unfortunately, is just spreading all throughout the city. And downtown Jacksonville is just a mess. They've been trying to get that cleaned up for years. Not a good place to go and hang out. But it's not nearly as bad as places like Baltimore and Philly and some parts of Chicago. I've got clients that live up there that said it's pretty rough. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and come down to 2,000 feet just to get ourselves ready for that. Boy, those windmills are just going to town. So what do you guys think of this flight? I know you've probably been out here before. I'd just never done a low pass. And of course, I'd never taken the time to research everything down here, but I really, really enjoyed this. And we may do Rotterdam too. They got a bunch of ports out there and a lot of history down there. Of course, The Hague is down there, so there's all kinds of stuff to see and talk about. So you can probably look forward to that one coming down the pipeline at some point as well. Just gorgeous. You can see why I left the sun at the time it was. Look at that water coming off the water there. Just amazing. I'd love to see how much wind-generated power they get on an annual basis out here. I bet it is a lot. But good for them. They're making it work. Alright, there's our runway. So let's get down to flap speed and gear speed here. And you probably already know that in Amsterdam, pretty much everything but the hardest of hardcore drugs are legal for recreational use. And from what I understand, they don't really have a serious drug problem, probably not nearly as serious as in the United States. So there's something to be said about the seemingly failed war on drugs that the U.S. has been pursuing for the last 30 years. But I had a very good friend who came out here years ago. He was doing an exchange student program. Well, not an exchange student. He went over to do like a semester when he was in college over in Ireland. And they came out here to Amsterdam, and being from Central Florida, he'd had a little bit of experience with psychedelic mushrooms, so he figured he was a seasoned pro and went into one of these places where you can get, like, I don't know, the equivalent of pharmaceutical grade mushrooms. And so he said he bought a handful of those, and the guy even warned him, like, hey, eat half of one, don't eat this whole handful. And so him and his buddies did exactly the opposite of that. Ate a whole bunch of them. And he said he spent the next 4 hours sitting on a bench in downtown Amsterdam thinking that his whole body had turned into his tongue. Like he was his own tongue. Which must have been an interesting experience. Alright, so I'm trying to think about the best way to do this. Our ground speed is going to get real slow here. It's only 109 knots right now. And you can see it's saying 130 on our airspeed indicator there. And I feel like we're a little bit high, so let's try to come down some. Slow down some more, get the gears out. Alright, doesn't like me going that slow without the gears out. You know what? Oh, I don't have gears in this plane. I thought it was in the Bonanza still, so that's not a problem. Okay. And when I'm in the Bonanza, you guys tell me, help me out with this. If I cannot get my alternate, or my standby alternator light to go off in the warning light section, I've never been able to. I followed all the steps and procedures, I just cannot get that thing to come off. It's like right up here in the corner. It's the standby alternator light, and there's a switch for a standby alternator in there. And I turn it on, turn it off, turn the other alternator on, turn it off, go through all the steps just like they say to do it, and it never goes off. So if you've had that experience and or know how to get that to turn off, please let me know. Doesn't change anything about the way you fly it except for just having a warning light on the whole time. Alright, once we get on the ground, hang out for just a few minutes. I got a lot of stuff to show you on the satellite map, and it's going to be pretty cool. Assuming we can ever get down. We may just freeze in place here in the air with this headwind. And it is a little bit of a crosswind, but it's not really blowing us, so that's cool. Let's move that out of the way. Alright, we'll get another notch of flaps out. And I'm not going to drive all the way over there to the airport. I'll just pull over on one of these taxiways, because that'll probably take a while. I may come back and buy that flight. Is that their tower all the way out there? Well, that's interesting. Look how far away from the airport it is. That's cool. Usually it'd be sticking somewhere down here. I may come back and get that Fly Tampa add-on for that airport. My curiosity is just killing me. I gotta see what that place looks like inside. You'll recall the only other nice airport add-on I got was that one for that Greek island that we checked out. What was that called? Corfu? And that was also by Fly Tampa, and that was pretty cool. But this one looked even way better than that. Alright, come on down, baby. Take your dear sweet time. We'll get a notch of flaps in just for good measure. We got them all the way out? Yep, we do now. Well, I don't think we're going to run out of runway. Come on. I want to try to get down. See that big black square in the middle? I'm actually going to try to eat up a little runway because that's the first taxiway pull-off that doesn't have to turn back. We're a little bit high, but that's okay. We want to get down to the middle there anyway. And since we'll probably have a ground speed of about 5 miles an hour once we put down, I don't think we'll have any trouble stopping. Oh, they got some passenger stairways over there. Maybe pull up next to one of those. I can climb up on the wing and hop off. Alright, let's get over the runway here. Jeez. Okay. Okay. Easy does it. Easy does it. Look at that windsock sticking straight out. What's our headwind now? 25 knots? It's pretty much a direct headwind now, too. Ooh, ooh, now we're getting too slow. Oh my gosh. This is like that double underflight out to Brisbane, Australia. Man. Alright guys, well if I don't have taken that long I would have kept a little bit more speed coming to this airport here. And we almost hit our taxiway just right. Perfect. Alright. Flaps up. I'm just going to pull over right in the middle here. We've already eaten up too much time just coming down. Doesn't appear to be a lot of aircraft traffic, so we should be okay. Well, I'll just be courteous and pull over here on this little run-up spot. Or run-down spot. Whew, okay, we're done. We're done. Park it. Shut it off. Alright, we'll just kill the condition lever here. Alright, here comes a little nav map. We got a lot of stuff to check out here. Alright, so first of all, this whole ring right here is all of these forts. Look at how many of them there are. And there's a lot more forts than that. I'll show you some more in just a minute, but look at that. Just all over the place. And then here's where Rotterdam is right here. And all of these other bookmarks are freeware add-ons. And I just marked them in case I wanted to fly out in that area, and we probably will eventually, but every single one of these spots is a freeware add-on. And that's the in-sim add-on. We'll get to that in just a minute. Alright, so here's where we took off from, Valkenberg. And again, now if you look at it on the Google map, this doesn't even exist. You can see the spot where it used to be, but it's totally cleared out, so the glider club better get in all the flights they can for now, because that's about to be gone. And here's the town of Leiden, where Rembrandt is from. And then there's that little shell castle I was telling you about, right in the middle of town right there. They got a couple churches down there. And this is the spot that they left open for that park, Vanderwerf Park. So the boat that had all the 40,000 pounds of gunpowder in it was parked right here, I guess, blew up. Probably blew a huge radius of buildings down. And then they just left this area open here. They probably have a memorial of some kind in there for that. But look at that perimeter wall. That is so cool. I want to live in a town like that. Or at least visit one. What was this thing here? Oh, there's another little castle. I tried flying over that and we couldn't see it. There was too many trees around it. I mean, if you're right over it and going real slow, you may be able to spot it. But a lot of them around here look just like that. That one that was flat before kind of looks like that too, as you'll see in just a minute. But they got the square moat and then the little drawbridge going out there to the castle right in the middle of it. All right, so we head towards Schiphol, came down here, and then here's, we didn't see that fort because it was right in front of us, but here's where they all started up. I'll just show you a couple of them. We won't do every one of them. But they all have that kind of arrow shape, and then back here, there's windows facing out this way. I don't think they put cannons in those, obviously, because I don't think they'd be pointing them back at the town. But you may remember in that Antwerp flight, they did have them pointing back at town, just in case anyone inside the town decided they want to try to take the fort, so they could shoot at people that might be coming from this way, too. But all along here is where they had the big cannon emplacements. Forts, 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 all the way around, coming out here to the next fortified town that we saw. Look at all those things. Everywhere. Oh, and here's that big stadium. It's got a retractable roof on it. Oh, closed, open, closed, open. And that's where the Ajax Football Club plays now. And then here's those very futuristic apartments they built that they thought everyone would just love, that nobody loved, and then it became low-income housing, and this is what the plane hit when it came down. So that's tragic, and I think they even have a little memorial down here somewhere. I'm not going to look for that right now, but they did. I saw it from the ground. And okay, so we came out here, and where is the town? There it is. Naarden. This is where they had the Naarden massacre. So only 60 people of the roughly 3,000 residents survived, but look at how just beautiful and precise that is. I love precision. I got a little bit of OCD, so that looks real nice to me. And that is not the church that they burnt them down in. Obviously, that's something newer. But that is really cool, isn't it? Look at that thing. And I think this is even another fort out here. On the satellite map, they just called it an island of some kind, but whenever you see something with these pointy angles, that usually means that it was a fort of some kind, but nowadays boaters just park there, I guess, and do some swimming and fishing. Can you imagine how cold that water is? Very cold, I bet. So here's Almere, and here's the Almere jungle. And man, I mean, from the air, look, they've even got like a little maze hedge in there. That definitely looks like a chateau estate, but it's not. It's a exotic animal sanctuary. You can see the little enclosures and stuff they got around there. Very cool. And then here's the Almere Castle, the castle that never was. And now you can see kind of some of the scaffolding up on the top of that there. And there's that tower that they built up. Well, now you can really see it well. Never quite got it finished. And they got lots of locks and stuff going through all these canals. Canals everywhere. And this is what I was talking about. So you got a little single-family neighborhood here. And out here, they actually have more here than a lot of the other places. But all the rest of this here, multifamily stuff. Very much like the south side of Jacksonville now. All throughout here. And then here's their big commercial center where they built it all up around, just like they do in Jacksonville now. So you can go shopping, you can go to restaurants and all that there, and then I guess you live all around the perimeter. Seems to be working, because these places have a very low vacancy rate, at least out here by us. All right, so here's where, let me show you these dikes real quick. If you want to fly out this way, here's the first one. And again, it looks very good. And you can see this island too in the sim. It's not all blurry like that. But this looks good, because that was the in-sim mod. And then here's the other one out here. So here's how close we are to the waterway, the ocean. And if you fly over this end of it right here, this is very well modeled in the sim too. And that's kind of cool too, which is I guess how they control the water levels in there. But that looks fantastic. And originally I was going to take a flight up here. There's another little castle out here too. And that did not look like that in the sim. You couldn't even really see these little parts here. So that's why we didn't fly up here, because that didn't look like a castle. And this big Navy base up here I thought might look cool. But it didn't look anything like that. You could barely even see the dock. So that was unfortunate. We didn't come up here either. But look what they got. Look at these big forts here. Incredible. Beautiful. And that's kind of odd. You'd think they'd have the points going out that way, but they don't. They point inwards, like that one's pointing away from the harbor here. And down here is a big ordnance storage area for the base, and that was all flat too in the sim. So a little bit of a disappointment out here. You could tell what these were. You could see the moats, but the structures and stuff down there you couldn't see. But if you go right up here, look at this. We got two more. Actually, three more. 1, 2, 3. Forts, forts everywhere. Just amazing. All right, so we didn't do any of that stuff there. We circled around the top here. And let's see, we got a fort there. That's the resort fort, so let's take a quick peek at that. Let it depixelate. You can see the little swim pool there. Let's get even closer. Look at that. Well, they had water in it in the sim. But they got all the hotel rooms and stuff in here, and then you can lounge by the pool there if you want to. They should throw some paddle boats or something out there. Maybe they stock it with fish. All right, then we came out here, and this is where that big footprint of the other castle was. Look at this thing. So the outer moat would have been, let's see here, probably around this thing on the very outer part. And then they would have had the curtain wall going on this little elevated part here. And then they would have their inner moat. Whoa, that's really close, isn't it? Oh, we completely lost it. Oh, I still have the centering on. That explains that. Sorry about that. And then the central castle would have been here. And here's the other place. Look at that. You just could not see it in the sim. Totally flat. But that's the Assenberg Castle right there. Looks beautiful. Landscaping looks beautiful. Then we came to the port with the other big island fort. This was the biggest of all of the defense line forts. And that looks pretty cool. And in just a second, when it depixelates, I'll show you where, if you want to look at it from the ground, all these here are rusted out, dome-shaped cannon covers. Very cool. And most of this one's all underground, and, you know, I love underground things. There's all the steelworks out there. Looked awesome. Looked just like that. And there's a swimming pool. Look at that. So that was right, too. Man, that is just great. And, you know, they don't really have a lot of ships out here. So we can't be too disappointed about not seeing any. In fact, there's only one, it looks like. Oh, they got a few down here, too. Lots of locks, though, huh? Okay, and then we came down here to Haarlem, namesake of the other Haarlem. Look at that place. Beautiful. And then here's the big church where the organ is. And this thing here, which I forgot to point out, is an old prison. And they built this thing in 1901. It was one of 3, I think, that they've got out all in the Netherlands. And they closed it in 2016. And if you look inside of it, all the cell blocks kind of go around the outside of this thing. And after, I think, 2021, they converted it to like an education center that big corporations could rent out. So that's what they're using for now. Well, they don't let anything go to waste out here, do they? There's their big train station there. All right, forts. Oh, and here's the, we don't want to miss this. There's Big Spotter's Hill. And look at all these little gardens and stuff out here. This is just a huge park. And you can kind of see the thing that's up there now. Like I said, it looks like a big jungle gym. And that's that. But that one's probably not getting blown away. Okay, so let's get to the juicy stuff down here. There's their big Olympic Stadium. And I'm guessing some of this stuff here might also be remnants from when they had the Olympics out here. What is that? Oh, that's a cemetery. Sorry, that was very disgraceful to the poor folks buried in there. So there's their big park that they have. And then here's the Van Gogh Museum. And here's the Rijksmuseum here. And that place looks beautiful, too. And then up here we have their opera house, which we could easily see that. That was right out of our window. Here's the Royal Palace. There's the old church and the new church right next to it. And then here's the red light district running that way. And Anne Frank's house, you would never be able to pick it out. It's one of these little places right down here. And they said you need to get tickets if you want to go see that in real life about 6 weeks in advance. So if you're heading out this area and you want to check that out, make sure you get your tickets early. Oh, and you really can't see the front of this place from above either. That's our central station. And I didn't notice the word Amsterdam written on there. We got robbed. And here's that big H-shaped hotel, which you also can't really tell that it's got a big hole going through the middle of it, so that was cool. All those ports just looked amazing, so that was awesome. And then we came on in for our final approach. Very, very long, slow approach. So that's it, guys. Absolutely awesome. If you want to check this out, I made it real easy to put the add-ons in. You won't need any more than the ones I put in, so don't go sticking other stuff in there. It'll just take up space for places that you wouldn't be flying over. And then be mindful that one of those is the payware add-on that fixed up all the roads. But if you're flying around in this region, you might as well go ahead and get it for $6 or $8 or whatever it was. It was worth it. I got that from simmarket.com. And if you want the cows and sheep and goats and all that, you can get that stuff too. So that's it. As always, had an absolute blast. Can't wait to see y'all again in the skies. Later.